can you declare your interest at the appropriate time in the meeting? Taken. I'm not aware of any that we've any prior notice. Okay, lovely. So we'll move on to minutes of the last meeting, which was the 6th of February. Following two were cancelled due to lack of business, I believe. So does anybody have any queries? No, matters of accuracy first off. Were any of you on that committee at that point? See any of you here? So matters arising.
No, we don't raise matters arising on the so really matter of fact reiterate they prior to
Okay.
every member.
Happy to move them, Chair.
I'm really struggling to hear in here today. Is it just really echoey? Is it just my hearing aids not? And I can't hear. Didn't hear what you said, Councillor Davis. Are you able to use your microphone so I can hear you, please?
Saying is the air conditioning noisy? Yeah, sort of a background.
Yeah. I think it's a tractor outside.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My hearing's not very good either.
Yeah. Well, if we all need to raise our voices, you know, I'm sure that we will understand why we're doing that. Okay, so are we all okay with these minutes? We agreed? Yes, lovely, thank you. You need me to sign these?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Just at the front or anywhere in particular?
Just initially.
Okay. There we go. So that's that one. Thank you very much. So items requiring attention. I haven't got any. Does anybody else know of any? No? Okay, in which case we will move rapidly on to agenda item 5, matters for decision. We have got 3 matters for decision which really form the bulk of this meeting. So the first one is to consider the report of the Director of People and Culture about the proposed amendment to the approval process regarding the use of consultants, pages 1 to 4 on our agenda. So I will ask Maria to introduce the report, or Andrea Owen. I'm not aware that either of those people are here. So
Chair, I'm more than happy to take that on
Lovely,
behalf of the
thank you.
Director of People and Culture. So this report is aimed at clarifying the current internal process for effectively agreeing agency workers. Background to the report is set out in section 2. The current wording, if you go to point 2, around the appointment of interim staff, actually says directors in consultation with the leader and service cabinet member will appoint specialist consultants up to the total contract value of 100,000 per consultant. Where the total value is over 100,000, approval must be obtained by the chief executive and the appropriate cabinet member. The proposal is set out at section 3 of the report, and it is proposed that the process is clarified to say that directors in consultation with the service cabinet member may appoint specialist consultants up to a total contract value of 100,000 per consultant, and where the total value is over 100,000, approval must be obtained from the chief executive and the leader of the council. So that's the amendment there is around the leader. It's just to clarify the process and actually put the appointment at the right level. And then if you go to point 4 of the report, that just gives the wording as it will put changed into Schedule 8A of the financial regulations. Thank you.
lovely, thank you so much. So any comments, any questions from members? Councillor, so you're pronounced Davis or Davies?
Well, that's a tricky one. My maiden name is Davis without an E, and my married name is Davis with an E, so I don't care either way.
Okay, well, to distinguish you, so how do you? Andrea,
Yeah.
thank you.
Davis or Davis?
Do you mind if I call you Sue?
No, not at all.
In which
You can.
case, Sue, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. My question was about it doesn't state anything about the length of the contract. So it says a value of a contract of 100,000. Well, that could be over 4 years. So So it's, and not very much money. So does it state about the length of contract? Is it annual or?
Pass back to officers for this.
Sorry, we're just going to check that for you. I suspect it's annual, but I will just check to confirm that.
In the meantime, while that's going on, any other questions or comments? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thank you. Chair, I can't quite understand why it was the way it was. I know that's good because we're changing it to the way it is, but I can't really understand what the rationale would have been for how it was in the first place. Getting the leader involved at a lower level, but getting the cabinet, and bearing in mind that Councillor Hart was the leader for 104 years, I find it incredible that slipped through, frankly. So I'm very happy to support the change.
Is that a proposal to, are you moving?
Yeah, I'm very happy to move, Chair.
We'll wait for the clarification of your question, and then if we may.
I'm happy to second.
You're happy to second it. Thank you, Councillor Bailey.
Doesn't actually specify, we're just looking at it now. It's just the total value, but what I would say is agency are only ever taken on 6 months periods and then it's renewed. So that'd be the only proviso I would give. When it gets to 6 months, it'll be reviewed and we'll look at the total value. So if you've had somebody that's been rolling agency for 12 months and the value is getting close to that 100, it would be captured by this and go to the leader. I completely agree on the process and the wording. It was more than clumsy and needed rectifying.
So in terms of the timescales, does there also need to be an additional amendment to cover that, or is that all fine within the process from your perspective?
I think because it's covered within the total value, it will be captured however it rolls onto that total value. So the moment it goes and triggers 100,000, the time period isn't specified. It's the total. It's not the time period. It's literally the total that's been spent. We wouldn't want to be having agency over a long period of time anyway. We'd be aiming to put permanent staff in place.
Thank you very much. That okay with you? Yeah, lovely. Okay, so we have this has been moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, so we're ready to vote on that. All those in favour? Yay, passed, agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. To consider the report of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services about the proposed changes to the Council's roll call procedures for voting at full Council meetings, which is page 5 to 8 of our agenda. I'll ask Karen to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This was a suggestion that came through to the governance working group following the last meeting. Our current procedures are that any member can request a roll call at council. So that's the process by which every single member is asked how they're going to vote, and we record that as such in the minutes. So it's a simple majority. I think that was felt. It was quite a high threshold to pass currently with our different numbers that we've got these days. So the governance working group had a look at this. They did some benchmarking. We are a bit of an outlier in terms of our threshold being quite a lot higher than a number of others. So the governance working group had a look at that. I think what I would make clear is this only refers to full council. In terms of the budget, a roll call is part of the law anyway, and we apply that to any amendments as part of the budget. But also our processes also allow for any member present at the meeting to ask the clerk to record how they vote anyway, and we can do that at any meeting of the council. So the governance working group felt a lower threshold should be done. There's some pros and cons to the various options. They felt 10, 15 or 20, they couldn't come to a decision, and they wanted to put the decision in the hands of the procedures committee. I would just flag up the percentages have gone a little bit awry there. So 20 members is not 25% of the council. It's more like 33. So, and I did pass my maths GCSE, but only just. So the proposed rewording is at section 3.7 of the report. So rather than just saying if a majority of the members present agree, we're looking to change that to if 10, 15 or 20 members present agree. So open to members' views and feedback on that.
Thank you very much for that. So, members of the committee, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I totally support reducing the number because in the previous administration, we did have cases where we were blocked from having recorded votes. So I totally support reducing the number, but I would like to see it reduced further. I think 10 is too many. I'm in a group of 8. And I think that if we as a group felt that it was really important to have a recorded vote, we should be able to do that. And I think that it's doing nothing more than people being accountable for their decision making, and it's consistent with the Nolan principles and openness and transparency. And I think we don't have an issue with people calling recorded votes all the time. It's used quite sparingly, but I think that threshold of 10 is too high. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Any other comments from other members of the committee?
Well, I'm just thinking that what I've heard would favour the Green and Independent group, but it wouldn't favour the Conservative group, who have a membership of 7.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to be fair.
I know you are, but you know.
If you don't want me to be fair, Andrea,
It's fine. It's fine. Look, let's just get this into reality. Does it really matter? If you want it 8, we'll have it 8. If you want it 7, we'll have it 7. I don't think we really care.
I mean, I think we have a hand up with Councillor Brazil, Leader of the Council. Let's see what the Leader of the Council's got to say. Councillor Brazil.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, look, I hear what Jess is saying, and I totally agree with that. I do think I think 10 is about the right number, actually, because if it's such a contentious issue, I would hope that people would be quite happy to have their vote recorded either way. So I don't, it was disappointing that basically in the last council, because there was such a huge majority, that could just be stopped because that's what they decided for whatever reasons, which I never really quite understood. So I think 10's about right because the other issue is that then people start using it so every single vote is recorded every single time, and it does take up time, and as Andrea says, it doesn't really matter that much. It's all recorded now. You can see it on camera who voted which way, so people really are exercised about it. They can always check it through that. But I think 10 is about right. And so I would support that, but it's certainly not something worth dying in a ditch about.
Thank you, Councillor Brazil. And I think the other things, I mean, everybody will of course read the report and the table of pros and cons at 4.3, and I think that some of the feedback from the last council meeting that we had was that it was terribly long. I would hope that people all parties would use this process at whatever you agree that as the number, in a way which does not result in meetings becoming increasingly long for all items, but it could potentially. Councillor Andrea, thank you.
I'm going to move, and as Julian can't because he's not here, that we go for option 1, 10 members, 12% of the council, if it is 12%, because like Karen, I scraped through my maths.
Thank you.
It is 12%.
Okay. So, Councillor Thomas, is that you seconding?
I'm happy to second, and I will commit to Councillor Bailey that if she only manages 8, I'm sure the leader and I will make the numbers up for her.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll hold you to that.
Okay. Any other comments before we move to the vote? No, in which case, all those in favour of the proposed 10 threshold? Lovely. Agreed. Marvellous, that was easy. Thank you. So moving on then. So yes, so we now move on to agenda item 7, which is to consider a draft calendar of council meeting dates for 2026-27 council year, pages 9 to 28 on our agenda. I will ask Karen Strand to introduce this item, please.
We had a very interesting discussion on the calendar at the training earlier today, so members may want to reiterate some of the comments that were made earlier. So this is something that we bring to you every year. It's really to seek endorsement because we have cross-party representation here, so it's really to sort of seek endorsement to the calendar in its broad sense. We wouldn't be expecting to go through individual meetings and say, oh, I don't like the time of that or anything like that. So it's in line with sort of previous patterns. It's in line with known determinants. So we do try and take account of national park meetings. We take account of party conferences, LGA events, county council network events and things like that. We also, you know, certainly with some of the local committees like HATOX, you know, working in with the availability of rooms in other venues. So some of it is logistical as well. Some of it is legislative. So things like audit and investment and pension, there are some statutory deadlines that we have to abide by. So certain meetings are reflective of that. We also have some committees that feed into cabinet and some committees that feed into council. So again, it's trying to get the balance of that. It's a bit of a thankless task. I'm not going to lie. It's quite tricky. It's never going to please everyone, but we do our very best with this to make it the best it can be. I'd also be looking to share this with the CCA moving forward, the combined authority, and also my district colleagues. So we try and avoid those clashes wherever possible. With the best will in the world, it's tricky to do that, but we try our best. You know, where we're making sure North Devon HATOC is on a Friday, for example. So you'll see that. So trying to deal with those nuances wherever possible. But happy to take questions, Chair.
So thank you very much. I wonder, not having been here for the training, would anybody like to reflect some of the things that were raised in the training about this particular item? I'm going to go to Sue first and then Andrew, please.
Yeah, I made the point earlier in the training that I'm sure that Karen and her staff in Democratic Services go to have an enormous logistical headache putting together this calendar. And I expect that they take every consideration when they're preparing it. And I actually don't understand why this is an agenda item. I think they should be publishing the calendar. If people can make the meetings, make the meetings. If you can't, that's up to you. This is not something that we should be discussing, I don't think. I think they also do a very good job of putting together the calendar. And as Karen said, they try and take all the other scheduled meetings from the park and different places into consideration. They do a very good job of it. So
Do you want to respond to that as to why this comes to us even?
It's part and parcel of your terms of reference. That's why it comes here. But if members feel really strong, apologies, Michael. If members feel really strongly about it, we can tweak that as a term of reference, and I'm more than happy to engage with members in a different way next year. Maybe I just run it past group leaders, for example, outside of the committee structure. So we do have that engagement, and members, group leaders particularly, have the opportunity to pick up on that before we look to publish. I'm easy either way, to be honest.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Andrea next.
Right, well, I'm going to move that we note it because there is nothing to discuss. And Karen, we have had a conversation. If you could just include the first Tuesdays of the month, which is Exmoor National Park Authority, that would be absolutely great. And as an add on to it, that in future it gets run past the group leaders and doesn't need to come through any formal committee process.
And Councillor Bailey. Thank you. And then Michael after. Councillor Brazil.
Sorry, did you want me now, Caroline?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, so I was just going to say, look, I hear what Sue says and I absolutely echo the her sentiments about, you know, about how the logistical issues that Karen and her team face. One thing I would say that as a council is that I think it's really important that we you know, if we want, and I know we're not going to be here for that much longer, but if we want to encourage a more inclusive council, then we need to take into account, you know, councillors that have got families, or indeed myself, you know, with grandparenting duties, that the holidays, and particularly the half terms, actually, because those are more sort of, you know, are that we take that into account when we're doing it. Because I noticed that in the calendar year, our budget meeting is in the half term, and so is our AGM in the half term. And I hear what Sue says, is you make it if you can and you can't. But I think that we should definitely, that should be something that we weigh up when we're deciding when meetings should or shouldn't be. That should be one of the criteria that we use, is that so that we can have members who have family responsibilities. It doesn't restrict them in what they can do. And again, thank you to Karen and the team for doing this, because it's not easy, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Fife Cook.
Michael's absolutely fine. Yes, this is always a nightmare, isn't it? The problem is that we mustn't be looked upon as if it's harder for the smaller groups than it is for the large groups, because the simple fact is they haven't got enough, their numbers are so small. So if meetings are moved, it's highly unlikely that then those people are doing multiple jobs. So it's quite difficult. But I would say anything that makes the diary closer to set in stone is a better thing. If, as Sue says, if people can't make it, then they either send somebody else in their place, if possible. Otherwise, you're just chasing your tails all the time. You're trying to please at least 60 people, which is impossible. So I would say, yeah, let's look at giving you more power to decide when these meetings are. And if we can't make it, I'm afraid that's a bit tough luck, really. We've got to work around better. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do you mind if I just come to Karen and ask about this position with regard to substitutions? Thanks.
Substitutions.
Yeah, Michael Fife Cook has just suggested that if people can't attend, then somebody else can turn up, and there are named people for some things, I think, and
There
not
are
others.
named, substitutions are allowed in certain cases. So, for example, this committee and the Appointments and Remuneration Committee, that the leader or the group leader can nominate a deputy. The rest of our constitution doesn't allow for that. Again, if that's something members wanted us to explore, we would have to do a separate piece of work, because it would require amendments to our constitution. But again, as we sort of talked about in the training, all of these things, we are a new council, all of these things can be looked at if it's causing problems. Absolutely.
Is that helpful, Councillor Fife Cook?
The reason, I think what we have to look at is how much time you waste continually moving stuff around, about the fact of bringing in, say, another policy of allowing substitution. If it's much simpler to bring in allowing substitution, and it saves you days and months of work, then obviously that's the way we ought to be going, because at the end of the day, we want it the easiest process for everybody. And if that's the easiest process, then that's the way we should be looking at it.
We can certainly look at that. It would require some governance around that. For example, things like planning committee, you have to by law be trained on that. So I think there'd have to be some caveats. I think we'd be looking at named substitutes, would be an easier way of doing that, so we can make sure the relevant substitutes are trained. But certainly it's a piece of work we're more than happy to do for you. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you need a recommendation that you do that, or you just do that?
I think it would be helpful if the committee were to move a recommendation and ask governance working group to look at that whole process. Absolutely.
So we've already got the motion to note this already. We've got a potential second motion. I've got 2 hands up already. In terms of order, oh my goodness me.
Yeah, I was only to say, you know, in another place, we have named planning substitutes who have had planning training. We have named substitutes for scrutiny committees. Again, you know, based on political balance. And the reason we did that is exactly as Julian has said. It's because when our council elections came around 2 years ago, we ended up with a really high percentage of people who have 9 to 5s. Who you know, who can't always be there, and so we did it for exactly that purpose, because, you know, saluting the diversity of not having entirely retired or independently wealthy people being democratic representatives is a really good thing.
So Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I would definitely support ability to have substitutes. But in terms of the calendar, I do think it's important that it comes forward to this committee, because so that we're totally open and transparent, so that people out there, if they want to, they can turn up to this meeting and they can say, no, I'm not happy with the way you're scheduling your meetings. So I wouldn't be happy with it just going to group leaders. I think I'm not proposing any change to the calendar, but it is difficult to have a meeting as a parent so early in September, because it's like the first day back of school, which means in all the build up is when your children are still at home. So that's tricky. And I know it probably can't be changed, but I think it's a tricky timing.
So I did a little bit of consultation with other members of my group, and one of the things that was welcomed actually was having the budget meeting in particular during half term, so that those people who work in schools can attend. You know, so there is always going to be that balance, always. And so I personally, I think it's actually, to be inclusive, we need to try. I mean, it's difficult to balance inclusivity of all the various different groups. So this, from me, having listened to consultation, I'm personally quite happy with the budget meeting particularly, and the annual meeting where we actually need all our members to be able to attend, to allow people who work in schools to come along as well. My personal comment about it is that for full council meetings starting at 10:30, if we have group meetings at 9:30, that means leaving home at 7:30, which means walking the dog from 6:30, which means getting up at 5:30. I don't really want to have to get up at 5:30 in the morning to get to a full council meeting. Don't mind getting up at 6. 5:30 is just a bit early. Morning meetings are easier if you live closer. I wondered whether, if there's any particular reason why the council meetings are set for 10:30.
Might be my fault, Chair, because it might be my fault, because that was a suggestion I made to the Democratic Services team, because meetings that start at 2:30 and last for 5 hours, by the time you get to 6:30 at night, you're too late and you shouldn't still be there. So my justification was that if, you know, we're used to Thursday being a county council meeting day, why not start it? I must confess, Chair, I openly did not give a moment's consideration to your dog walking, and for that I do apologise.
Councillor Davis.
I hadn't noted that, so I just want to say that we've always used full council meetings so that we can use the mornings to go to things like corporate parenting. You're just adding another journey from North Devon to those who's listening. It just won't happen. There's no way it's going to happen. The other thing I do recall that the reason that we started having the afternoons is simply because of the traffic from getting from other parts of the county. And that's long before my time, and I've been here 20 years, where it was changed to that for that reason, about so busy in the mornings. Anyway, I don't really care. Not time to touch over it.
So in terms of corporate parenting, so I know it's in here somewhere. I haven't
No.
particularly highlighted it. I wondered if you could just speak to that,
We're
please.
still in discussions with the service on how best to deliver corporate parenting in the future, and the cabinet member actually popped in to see us on that yesterday. So Lou's been picking that up. So it's not reflected. Again, this is what I'm talking about. The calendar is a real point of contention. I think some people, the turnout at corporate parenting forum was poor, I'd say, on full council day. At best, you sometimes had 10, 12 members there because the day was too busy as it was. You have group meetings going on and all those other things. You know, if corporate parenting could be moved to a separate day, it doesn't need to be in person. You know, we could make it hybrid, and I think that's the model we're looking at moving forward. So we will pick up corporate parenting, but it might not form part of council day. It's such a long day for everybody.
Come back because I just use that as an example, but we normally have a briefing about things where people want to speak to all council members. You know, I think it's been useful for that. Where you know, somebody might, I don't know, I can't think of anything at the moment, but there's been other outside people that have come to speak to us about things that would affect all our residents, or maybe all the rural residents or the urban residents. And that's been very useful for them to say, you can come in on full council day because all the members are coming in anyway. I frankly don't expect me to be here at 9 a.m. on full council day, especially after discovering how long that last meeting went on, because we've got to get back as well.
And as a fellow North Devon councillor, I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that, Andrea. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? Any other comments? Sue?
Just a simple comment. You can't please all the people all the time. You can only please some of the people some of the time. I actually think 5:30 in the morning for dog walking is the perfect time in the summer, not necessarily in the winter. So, you know, everybody's got different lifestyles. I've got horses to look out before I come here every morning, but you know, that doesn't affect my diary management. I have to manage that personally. Individuals should be, you know, making their grandparent caring arrangements around this job, shouldn't they? Really, this should be the priority. And I still think that Karen and Democratic Services should be making the calendar to their suiting. And as I say, if we can't make it, you can't make it. So
I think if I'm honest, as a returning one, we've got 4 returning councillors here. I'd be interested to hear what your views are actually on having the council meeting in such a way that if there is a need for a briefing beforehand or something, how that worked for you in previous. I personally have found the complication of all the various meetings that do take place beforehand manageable when we've started a bit later, but if they start early, actually you cannot do the meeting with the chairs. You cannot manage to do the group meeting because you can't physically be in 2 places at once. And if there is a need for an additional briefing or something, to fit that in as well actually physically becomes impossible from my perspective. So I'm going to ask both of you just to reflect on your experience. Thank you.
I find that on the day of full council, it's actually quite difficult to focus on anything else. So for me, having a meeting at 10:30 is good because you can have, if you want to have a group meeting first, you can, and then you can come and then focus specifically. I find I don't remember any briefings beforehand. Corporate parenting, I think it's difficult to concentrate when you've got a big meeting coming up. So for me, I'd rather have corporate parenting done on a different day via Teams as an option, or in person if preferable. So for me, the change, it has felt easier and more manageable for me personally at 10:30.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
The principle of starting earlier than 2:15, I think, is valid. Whether it has to be 10:30, I'm not particularly bothered about. I continue to stand by the belief that starting meetings at 2:15, knowing that full council is always at least 3 hours and usually longer than that. I think starting as late as 2:15 is unrealistic, and then you have exactly the same problems at the other end of the day in terms of getting out of Exeter, or indeed it going on too long. I think there's, in the curve, there is a sweet spot. It might not be 10:30. 10:30 might be too early, but 2:15 is too late.
So, Councillor Thomas, it sounds like you're almost going to propose an alternative time, which might be somewhere in that sweet spot.
Well, I'd look to Karen, really, Chair, because Karen knows Well, no, because actually, if you look at, in fairness, if you look at the county council dates that are on the calendar, you deliberately haven't got anything else on those days, have you? For that reason. So, you know.
Yeah. There's a few things to pick up from what members have said. What I would say is we always used to have the chairman's brief when we had a 2:15 meeting. We always had the chairman's briefing. It was always 9:30, and that affected, say, 20 people. So they had to be in for 9:30. So we've removed that element, and we're holding chairs briefings a couple of days before the meeting now. And again, as a team, that gives us more time to do all the last minute preparations. I'm not going to lie that the AGM was an absolute nightmare. We were still amending paperwork 10 minutes before the meeting. It was, and I just don't want to go through that again. It was too stressful. In terms of the comments around meetings in half term, I accept what's said around the budget meeting. We do try and avoid school holidays. We have done that. The issue with the budget meeting is to push it into the following week. It makes it too late for the districts to get their precept letters done. That's the tricky one with that one. To be honest, I hate budget meetings. It always clashes with my birthday. So just on a purely selfish note, going to the May meeting, you'll see we've had to change it. It was originally on the 21st, which isn't half term, but May 2026. But we were informed that the Devon County Show takes place on the 21st now. So we've had to push it into the week after. So that's the reason why that one falls in half term. Going back to the September one, if members wanted to push it to the 10th, the week after, that isn't an issue at all. There's nothing else the following Thursday. The briefings on council day, again, we were fine. I take Andrea's point that we did used to organise, corporate style briefings or external presenters. We're picking that up in a different way. So we've got the master classes as part of the calendar now, but we've also got 4 member development days that are scheduled in throughout the year as well. And that's kind of so we've still got those networking opportunities for members and the opportunity for external presenters as part and parcel of that process. The timing of full council, it's 50-50. It's, I'm not wedded to a start time of 10:30. I think if you're pushing it later, you're going to be going for an hour and then people are going to want to break because they're starving. That's the other, you want to get a reasonable part of business done before members are wanting a comfort break. So this is what I think that the discussion really articulates what I was talking about earlier, that this is really difficult and it doesn't fit all. So I welcome what Sue said. Actually, it's really, really difficult and everyone has got different lives and it is a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, thank you. And I've got Councillor Fife Cook was first and then Councillor Brazil. So Michael.
The problem is, I think, once you've set out the calendars, those of us who almost live here or have our diaries kind of populated rather a lot, every time there's a change, there's a terrible knock-on effect. Because the fact is, I've already decided which particular meetings I need to go to, which is more important, where I can have value. The problem is when these meetings change, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't change, but the problem is then we're having to redo our calendars, and quite often it ends up like a campaign meeting. I'd rather know at the beginning whether I'm going to be able to make a meeting or not, because if I then have a space and I think, oh, I've cut out this other meeting because I couldn't get to it, and now because my other meeting shifted, it really is extremely difficult. So I think the more that you can decide and set a calendar for most members, it then at least gives us the possibility to make absolutely sure that we can go to the meetings that we're most relevant to be at, instead of continually flipping these things up and trying to decide which ones we can go to. So, if we can kind of make it a little bit better, a little bit closer to being, you make the decision, we make it, or we don't make it, or we can send a substitute. To me, that's got to be the way forward.
Thank you. I mean, I think you'll appreciate that this is actually about setting dates right until the end of May 2027. So the point of this is so that you avoid that very problem that you're highlighting. Whether or not that decision is made in consultation with group leaders or indeed through this committee is not yet decided. Perhaps Councillor Brazil might have a view or not as leader of the council and leader of the Lib Dem group, but I'm just going to move over to Councillor Brazil now, please.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Look, I think Karen is sort of explaining how difficult it all is, and I really appreciate that. And so when I said about half terms, I don't, you know, that's not a hard and fast rule, but just to bear that in mind. So if there's an either or, if we can do it outside of half term, do it. If it's got to be in half term, as you've alluded to there, you know, with the moving of the Devon show and things like that, then so be it. And that's it. But you know, I think Dan makes the point that if we want to have a council that represents everyone, then we need to bear that in mind, because you know, my previous experience of council and at Southampton as well was that it was basically populated by retired old people. And whereas they're super important, all of them being old retired, it's not healthy for democracy. It's not representative. So I do think it is important that we do actually think about people who have different lifestyles, 9 to 5s, children, etc., like that. And you know, and I'm sure Karen does that already. So you know, I'm very happy for this. I agree with Jess. I think it should come to this committee because it gives more of an opportunity. Although I can't remember what is the recommendation. I think the recommendation is that we recommend this to full council, so there will be an opportunity at full council. Yeah, the count. Well, let's see, where is it?
So this is to just endorse it today for publication, Julian, so we wouldn't take this one to full council.
Okay. Well, then in which case, yes. No, I absolutely
Thankfully.
agree that with Jess that it should come to this committee.
Julian, you should have seen the look on Karen's face when you said that. It was an absolute picture. When you said it was going to full council, I think poor Karen died over there.
Okay. Sorry about that, Karen. No, but I think if it's not going to full council, then it definitely needs to come to this committee rather than just going to the council leaders. And actually, council leaders, obviously, we prioritise the council more. It should probably go to, you know, your whip or your council group managers rather than the leader. But look, it's you know, we're not going to get it absolutely right. It's impossible to do that. So but you know, I'm happy to endorse it as it is at the moment.
Okay, so we have a number of different matters then. So coming back to the committee, first of all, do you want to come back on that, Karen?
No, I was just going to offer to sum up and say where I think we are.
Because yes, sorry, Councillor Thomas.
In terms of the council meetings, can I suggest we do an 11 till 1 with lunch at 1 for 20-minute break, and then do 1:20 or 1:30 till 3:30 or whatever. So you've got a clear, you know, because 2 hours of business is a good 2 hours and a natural break, and then a bit of lunch out in the ante chamber, and then back in for whatever else needs to be done. I would have thought that's sensible. And then that allows North Devon members that extra, and far southeast Devon members, and anyone else. Yeah.
So would that work from a looking after the meeting point of view?
Absolutely, that's absolutely fine, not a problem.
Is there a separate procedurally, we have a motion to note this, and what was the second part of your motion?
Yeah, I'll.
So okay, so committee. Okay, so committee, would it be helpful if perhaps we took each of those issues individually?
So if I may, I think we've got agreement. I think if Andrea's said she's not happy, she doesn't not worried about pushing that forward. So the principle would be that we make the amendments to, as discussed, around the timing and change of council meetings, adding Exmoor National Park, and then that it comes back just as the manner it does at the moment. And then I think we're probably there, Chair.
And to also add to ask the governance working group to investigate the issue of substitutes and come up with a protocol. And then we can make those, it probably by the time we've got it through governance working group here, full council, because it'd be an amendment to the constitution, we could maybe look to do substitutes with effect from the AGM.
Does that suit committee? Okay. Anybody else got anything else that they would like to say other than to reiterate our huge thanks as the committee to Karen and your team for the horrific nightmare it must be putting this together?
As demonstrated.
As demonstrated. Any more from any more? In which case, we have a proposal on the table, I believe. We do. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder and Councillor Thomas. All those in favour? Okay. Do you want to put your microphone, Councillor Thomas, put your microphone on,
I think
please?
it's to add in Exmoor National Park on Tuesdays, to change the date of full council meetings to 11 o'clock, to do some governance working group work on substitutes for meetings,
And
and to bring it and to bring
back
and to bring
here
it
in
back
the
to this
future
meeting
rather
annually,
than
just so that we'll have to
outside
go
of
through
it.
this once a year, just once.
So,
Yes.
so we all clear on what the proposal is? Excellent. So those in favour? Lovely. Excellent. I think that's easily carried. Thank you so much.